Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this particular video, I'd like to talk about Doctor Who, specifically relating to a quote that comes from an article on DWTV.UK to do with Stephen Moffat discussing the Doctor's regeneration limit as it pertains to Peter Capaldi's upcoming 12th Doctor. Here is the direct quote that I find very compelling indeed. He says, he can only regenerate 12 times. But, and it's an implied but that I've added, I think you should go back to your DVDs and count correctly this time. There's something you all missed. I find this to be a very intriguing sort of quote about this whole topic of the regenerations and the regeneration limit. I feel like it's a non-issue. I mean, they're going to be able to answer it one way or another. We've already had, instances in the classic series and such where the Master has gotten a renewed regeneration cycle, or been offered it, at least by the Time Lords and such. And I think, the Doctor is an enterprising enough individual. If he could survive the Time War and be not encased within it, he's smart enough to come up with a way to keep his regeneration cycle, renewed and stuff like that. Now, I do still think that this statement, go back to your DVDs and count correctly this time, that's an interesting statement because, I wonder what exactly it is. Obviously, Moffat has a specific reference in mind when he says this. And the first thing that comes to most people's minds is going to be in the modern series, Let's Kill Hitler, Series 7 Part 2, or Series 6 Part 2, rather, where essentially River Song, who is sent to kill the Doctor, assassinate him with poison, later returns once realizing, she's going to be sort of his love, the love of his life. She sacrifices her regenerations to save him. Now, it's been rife for debate. Did her regeneration cycle transfer into the Doctor? And the thing that makes me pause and think, well, that can't be what Moffat actually means or is referencing, is because he says there's something you all missed. Well, surely he would have to know that all of us out here, all of us Whovians, would be speculating that very point. I mean, as soon as that episode aired, we were speculating that point. You can't tell me that what's going to happen is, when Matt Smith's 11th Doctor reaches his end, the end of his time, that we're going to reference back to that, and that's as easy as it's going to be. I prefer to think there's got to be something more elaborate, something that might even go back to the classic series of Doctor Who to account for what Moffat's getting at. And the first thing that came to mind was The Brain of Morbius with Tom Baker's 4th Doctor, where he is sort of matched in a battle of wits, of mentalities with Morbius, hooked up to this machine. And we see, his previous incarnations, John Pertwee, Patrick Troughton, and William Hartnell, respectively. But there's another half dozen faces that we see, incarnations that begged the question back then already in the 70s when this aired. Are there prior incarnations of the Doctor that we're not aware of? And then you have John Hurt's Doctor come along, who is not allowed, not, sort of given the privilege of carrying the name the Doctor. So it immediately made me think, is this, with John Hurt's Doctor, is this the way that Stephen Moffat is going to validate that sequence in The Brain of Morbius, where essentially these other incarnations were personas of the Doctor before maybe he took that title? Like maybe he was up to other things. He was another sort of Time Lord, not necessarily a malevolent, force or anything like that, but maybe something happened through the course of his life that made him want to have a new outlook, and that first Doctor was the first man, the first incarnation of many, to say, I want to be known as the Doctor. Very intriguing sort of line of thinking. And I also get into thinking about non-canon Doctor Who stuff, like there have been references in other media about, multiple versions of the Ninth Doctor, from, of course, Christopher Eccleston's on-screen version to the Ninth Doctor as portrayed in the animated feature Scream of the Shalka, or Shalka, however that's pronounced. I really have to wonder if this is another reference because, of course, Scream of the Shalka came out on DVD recently. Could this be something Moffat's referring to, where we have sort of multiple universe versions of the Doctor. Then I get to thinking about, well, the regenerations that weren't actually full-on regenerations from the Meta-Crisis Doctor, that whole Dr. Donna affair, the time that Matt Smith's 11th Doctor, I think it was in The Angels Take Manhattan, ended up healing River Song's hand by using some regeneration energy. And all of these little things, it makes me go all the way back, really, to the end of the War Games, when the second Doctor, Patrick Troughton's Doctor, was being forced to regenerate by the Time Lords. And you have it implied, I think, circa the two Doctors, which was when, of course, Colin Baker took over as the sixth Doctor. Patrick Troughton had a follow-up appearance in that particular serial, along with, of course, Fraser Hines, who played Jamie McCrimmon. And there's some implication, because, of course, this second Doctor looks older, he's got gray hair instead of black, that he's working for the Time Lords. There's that whole lost sort of season or chapter of the second Doctor's travels. And so it begs the question, because if we can have a forgotten Doctor, which was, of course, John Hurt, if we can have all of these myriad examples of not quite full-on regenerations, don't they amount to something? Don't they add up? And then, of course, as I say, that moment in Let's Kill Hitler, which seems to be the most obvious choice as far as what it could be that Moffat's referencing, when he says, as I say again, he can only regenerate 12 times, but I think you should go back to your DVDs and count correctly this time. There's something you all missed. What does he think we missed? What are we not counting that we should be? There are times when people have brought up references he's made in, like, the Sarah Jane Adventures and things like that, and these are not things to be counted or taken seriously. So I think it's very intriguing, because Moffat is a mind game player. We are being played, and I don't know exactly how it is we're being played, and that's part of the fun of when he does Doctor Who. Of course, sometimes his little surprises, as I've said elsewhere, are predictable. These are things that we actually see coming from miles down the road. And either, the way he handles it is well regarded, or it's kind of meh, we could have done without that. I am really intrigued by his statements, and thinking about all these examples of the regeneration history of the Doctor, whether full-on or missed attempt or stalled attempts, and what have you, all of these different little hints at who the Doctor is, and whether he could be more than what we know on screen. And so I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below if you'd like to jump in on this whole speculation game about what it is that Moffat might be getting at as far as how many regenerations the Doctor really has, where he could have gotten new regenerations. Was it just River Song's sort of, giving him a new life cycle in that moment in Let's Kill Hitler? Or is there more to it? Could he have found another way that maybe we just didn't realize? Or is there some line of dialogue somewhere buried among the din of an episode that we just never thought amounted to much, and it'll turn out to be something quite huge later on? So yeah, I'd love to hear from you, what your thoughts are on this, anything you have to add, speculation-wise, overall, and otherwise, I hope this video finds you well. I'll catch you later. Peace.